Hide me away, oh Lord. 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 In the day of trouble, 'neath the shadow of your wings. Hide me away, oh Lord. Hide me away, oh Lord. Hide me away, oh Lord. Hide me away, oh Lord.
I'm happy to be here today. My name's Jaynes, and I've been at Waterview about 37 years. We came here the year I graduated from high school, so my parents also go here, Ed and Gail Coleman, and I raised my family here. I'm here tonight to talk to you about balancing work and motherhood. And I hope this encourages you, and I hope it helps you in your plight as a mother. I do have a script, and I'm going to use that, but I will see how it goes. It's a daunting task to speak to other women about being a mom. We all have strengths and weaknesses, and when preparing to speak, my weaknesses came glaring out. But tonight, I'll work to concentrate on the good things that have happened in my mothering adventure. My topic tonight is balancing work and motherhood. I'm not here to persuade anyone to work or not work, only to let you know what I think has been some of the most beneficial parts of my mothering walk. I'll start by telling my story of motherhood. My husband and I were married for 1.5 years when we found out we're going to have our first child. Very exciting. Something I had been anticipating with a lot of excitement. I love babies. I was an avid babysitter as a teenager, and even now love holding and caring for babies. In fact, my son laughs at me. He's 29 now, but one day he was like, "What are you going to do when you retire, Mom?" And I said, "You know, I'd like to volunteer at a hospital and rock babies." And he was like, "What? That's kind of weird." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Maybe I won't do it." But I thought they needed people to do that. And so the story goes on. Of course, I'm still working at this point. So he gets out of college and he gets a job. He's talking to his boss, and his boss's wife is retiring. And he goes, "What's your wife going to do now that she's retired?" "Well, she just wants to volunteer at a hospital and rock babies." And he came home and he goes, "Mom, there's other women that want to do that." And so anyway, I thought that was kind of funny, just that he would not think that his mother should want to do that. So anyway, that just tells you how much I love children. But at the point I found out I was pregnant, I was working, I was going to school, getting my master's. Our house had just flooded over Christmas from a water line breaking, and we bought a new car. So in other words, we had a lot going on. So that's where I get my title. My title is not balancing work and motherhood. My title is readjust. And that's what I've found over the years I've had to do over and over again based on our current situation. And what we're all doing right now with COVID, right? So we were excited to have a baby, but we were busy. And we had a lot going on, and we had a lot of work to do to get ready for a new baby. I'm a teacher. I was going to continue to work after I had Parker. I was able to find a sweet grandmother that liked to keep babies that were under 1 year, and her name was Nancy. She was incredible. Her husband would walk Parker around and say all the presidents' names, because they had all the presidents in little frames in their dining room lining all the walls. So he, whether he knows it or not, he learned all the presidents' names. And she was just the sweetest thing. She kept record of everything he did for me. He slept a ton. And if he did anything new, like roll over, she would not let him do it again, so that the next time he did it would be an exciting time for him to see himself roll over. And then when I got there, and I went at lunch some days and would leave to go see him at lunch, because I wanted to be with him all the time I could, and so I just adjusted. I made my day work so that I could be with him as much as possible and limit how much I had to be at work. The next few years I did teach an earlier class. Parker got up pretty early, And that way I could get out of school. Back then. The hours were different, but I got out at 2:30. This was great because I could pick up Parker. He had already had a morning nap and an afternoon nap, and that maximized our time together. I had a lot of time in the afternoon with him. It worked well. I did, errands with him, or we played in the front yard. It just worked really well. So I readjusted how I taught school so that I could be with him as much as possible. He was so precious to me, and I wanted all the time I could possibly have. I remember many days coming home, putting toys in the front yard, and Parker would run and play while I raked leaves. So I even used it for chores. I tried to make chores and things I had to do fun part of our day as well. To get things done that I needed to do without Parker, I usually did them at night after he went to bed. We had a house that I could clean for the most part from top to bottom after he went to bed, if I stayed up late. So I used that time after his bedtime to clean or get caught up on schoolwork. I didn't stay at school past my teaching hours, so I usually had some work to do at home. Before I had children, I worked only at work. I just really worked hard just to stay at work till I got everything done, and never brought work home. But after children, I had to readjust. I had to rethink that model. And after Parker was asleep, that's when I would get the work done at night and be ready for the next day at school. I'm going to add here just another adjustment we had in our life that was a big one. Parker was a severe asthmatic, and he was hospitalized at 5 weeks and 2 years for RSV on numerous occasions. And on numerous occasions, we were in the specialist office without an appointment, just going in, hoping they would see us. I constantly had to readjust plans to accommodate taking care of his health needs. We watched a lot of children's videos while doing breathing treatments. Luckily, Parker was a snuggler and enjoyed rocking with his mom, so we could make it work, but it was a lot of adjustment over and over. When Parker was 3.5, we had our second child, Lindsay. And after her birth, I realized working full-time was going to be very difficult for me. I just didn't think there was enough hours in the day. I felt like I was doing okay with one child, but two was going to be really hard for me. I had Lindsay in August, and I stayed on maternity leave until December. When I went back for the spring semester, I had a house cleaner and did anything and everything I could to simplify my life. I went to my principal shortly after coming back to work and asked if I could work part-time. Starting the next school year. I had a good friend that had also had a baby, and she wanted to go and work job share, and so to our surprise, the principal honored our request. And we wrote up a proposal, and despite the many naysayers, because I'm telling you, nobody thought that our school district would do it, we worked half days. It was great. I worked in the morning, picked up the kids at lunch. It was a busy day, but a good day. Parker went to preschool that we had at Plano Senior High 2 of the days during my teaching hours, and it was nice knowing he was down the hall. I'll admit, going from 1 to 2 was a huge, huge step in our family life. It made everything we did more complex. I was really surprised how much more complicated things were, but my working part-time was able to make that shift and manage the workload at home. I continued working part-time with the thought that when the kids got in school, I would consider working full-time. The year that both kids would be in school, well, along came Samantha, our third child. God was kind to me. As I told you earlier, Parker was very severe asthmatic. Lindsay also had her bouts with asthma and sickness, but Samantha was healthy and rarely sick. She was not the best sleeper or eater, but she was healthy. I mentioned earlier that having 2 children was a big jump for us, but going to 3 was a piece of cake. I had heard that after 2, it really didn't matter how many you have. I agree. Of course, I did not test the theory and have 4, so I don't know anything after 3. I was able to continue working part-time after I had Samantha. I worked mornings, was home in the afternoon with Samantha, and was home for Parker and Lindsay after school. It worked really well. For 18 years, I taught some percentage of the day, ranging from 50% to 85% of the day. I was blessed to have been given this opportunity to work hours that helped me in my efforts as a mom, and I worked 50% until Parker was 14, Lindsay was 10, and Samantha was 5. I gradually bumped it up to 85% over the next 8 years and was still able to take the kids to school and be home when the kids are home from school every day. I think as moms, it's important to constantly think about what is best for our children and best for our family. I tried to think of examples of this behavior over the 29 years I've been a mom, and we'll share those with you. I think these are some of the keys to being a mom, whether you're working outside the home or not, that are beneficial to a mom and to her family. As a mom, you have to continually readjust your goals. And so that's why I called this Readjust. You have to readjust your goals, your activities, and your expectations. When I worked before children, I only worked at school. I went home, I devoted my time to my husband, our home, church, and also going to school, of course. After children, I decided to use my day differently. I wanted to be home with the kids as soon as my school hours were over, so that work that needed to be done that I didn't have to do at school, I did at home. Either when the kids were asleep or in the evening when we were hanging out around the house together. As I told you earlier, after having a second child, I decided that working full-time was more than I could handle with 2 children, and I readjusted my work schedule. It had been a wonderful blessing in our life. Of course, financially, it was a big hit, but the reward of time together was far worth it for our family. I think having a child with serious health conditions also forces you to readjust your thinking. You just figure out how fragile life is. And just to let you know, when you're in the midst of a crisis, I guess, you probably don't realize how fragile. But what happened to me is when Parker was 2, I told you he was in the hospital for RSV. And I remember calling the doctor, and he was a specialist, a pulmonologist, and he could hear Parker over the phone. And I said, so do you think we need to come to the hospital tonight, or do you think we can wait till in the morning? And keep in mind, I was a very young mother and probably not the smartest. But he said, you need to come now. And I said, oh, okay. And he said, you can't live if you can't breathe. And so it kind of hit me hard, that, wow, my son could actually stop breathing possibly because of this asthma attack he was having. So it was a hard lesson to hear, but it was good for me to realize how serious his situation was. I also was at the pharmacy one day, back when there was an Eckerd's. I don't know if you remember those days. And I went to the pharmacy, and I was picking up his large bag of medicine, and the pharmacy tech said, oh, he must be really sick. And I said, no, he's just, he's medicated and he does well. And the pharmacist looked at me, and he goes, you have a severe asthmatic child. And again, it hit me hard to hear those words. I didn't want that to be true. When you have a serious health condition, the world stops. You have to be ready to deal with it. So when social outings, cleaning the house are all out of your mind when you have an illness to deal with. To this day, we have medical issues with our son, even though he's grown and gone. Because he's been sick, he has a high tolerance for adversity when it hits. He's been in the emergency room more than any of my kids. Samantha probably has been the least, like I told you. And funny story about her, she one time took her to the ER, and she's so in charge of herself that she cut her eye, and when she cut it, they glued it. They couldn't stitch it. And so when they glued it, she didn't like how it felt. At 3 years old, she told the doctor to take off the glue and do it again and make it neater. So just to tell you, that little girl was in charge of herself from the very beginning. Another area I've readjusted over the years is my social activities. There's been years I've had bunco, and it's fun to be with your women friends and have a night out, but there have been years that I just didn't think it was a good fit for our family. Especially years when the kids had activities. In the later years, I was in constant need to be at home or tutor them with their studies or do whatever needed to be done for our kids. Readjusting your expectations is probably the most difficult. I enjoyed a picked-up house. I won't say clean, because although I try, there's always cleaning that needs to be done. But I do love knowing that everything is in its place. Even if that meant it's stuffed in a drawer, because that's kind of one of my things. There are times that I have to let go of that expectation, and I just go to bed, or enjoy one of the kids' performances at school, or lay in bed with my kid and let them tell me about their day. It's so important to relax and let some of those things go. Let your expectations come down and take care of your child's needs while you're in that moment. Another strategy I have is be ready. Have strategies that make your life easier. One of mine is to cook large amounts of chicken and hamburger and have them ready so that you can pop them into a meal at any time. I could make numerous different dishes quickly by having just chicken or beef already cooked up. Also, as much as I hate the grocery store, try to keep your pantry stocked so that you're always ready to make one of those dishes in a moment's notice. Check-off lists help me, iPhone calendar, reminders. Utilize these tools to keep yourself organized and ready for the next event. Be ready to stay up with your kid at night or get up early. Lots of reasons pop up in your life. Your sick child, emergency room visits, science fair projects. One year, Lindsay was in the garage till 1 a.m. with a fellow student, and so I needed to stay awake and be there for him. Also, I've had some of my best conversations with my children at night, laying in bed. Also, getting up early to see my kids off to golf tournaments. One morning, my daughter Lindsay was in a golf team, and her coach was very strict but very loving, and he did great things for the kids, and I loved him, but man, he was strict. And if you weren't there on time, he left. Well, we live really close to Pierce, so we literally have to leave like 3 minutes to get to Pierce on time. So I'm driving her up there. He can see me. That bus driver can see me, and he drives off. He sees us coming, and he drives off. I'm telling you, I've never chased a bus, but I did. I chased that bus up Coit going north, and I honked at him, and I got him to pull over. And I got my daughter on the bus to the tournament. And he acted like, well, hey, I didn't know you were coming. And, he made light of it, so I did too. But anyway, that was one of our funny morning stories. And if she would have gone up to the school that morning without me, he would have left her. And she wouldn't have chased the bus, which, good thing she wouldn't have. But I was there, and I think that made all the difference that day, and that's what was important. Also, you're going to take your kids to sectionals, all those things you need to cherish. Put in those extra efforts. It lets your child know how important they are to you. When Parker was in college, I never knew when he was going to text or call with news, concerns, or the dreaded "Mom, I'm sick." Yes, in 4 years of college, he had to go to the ER at least 3 times. Severe ear infections, etc., plague him. But the sweet text I got let me know how much he appreciated me. I just beam with pride when I read some of the sweet texts he writes me. Of course, the sweetest ones were actually after I sent money. He has requested when he was in college. We won't discuss his charm factor. Now that he's an adult and he has his own home, I'm still excited to hear from him anytime he calls. In fact, my girls say I get a little giddy. So I guess Mom is always, it's a great pleasure, and I treasure talking with my kids. I just love them. Another strategy I have for being a mom is accept help. Have family, friends on alert. I've been very fortunate. My mom, as I told you, lives nearby. She's been here so many times for me. She's helped me over the years. It's important to your children that you be at doctor appointments, activities, school functions, but there are a few times for different reasons that just don't work out. And in those instances, my mom was able to pick up the slack. She also helped me when I got behind at home. She'd come over and help clean or fold clothes or do laundry, and it helped me a lot. I also have friends and neighbors that I had kind of on speed dial, and if I got caught in a situation, they would help me out. When the kids were in elementary school, I had a sitter. She was in college, and she would pick the girls up and hang out with them for an hour if I was running a little late. It was a special treat, and it was, if you know, it was Megan Beals that used to go to, her dad goes to church here. It's been a neat relationship, and now Megan's older, and we help her with her kids, Riley and Kingston. What's done is done. That's another strategy I have. In other words, sometimes you're going to forget. Sometimes something's going to pop up, and it's not going to go the way you wanted. And my best advice is don't stress, because many times somehow you can make those things work out, and if you can't, realize it, drop the activity, and be ready the next time. It's more important to maintain a good attitude and not let missing something ruin your day. It was a momentary lapse, and if you're me, it's going to happen again. I tried to forget about tonight, but somehow I remembered. Keep your priorities straight. I know that teaching is a noble position. It's also a job. And it is so important to remember the reason, or at least my reason for doing it. And that is to earn income for our family. So I try to remember to derive my importance as a person from my Christianity and my family. Another strategy is enjoy your family. Find times at home, in the car, in the doctor's office, wherever you're going to have fun. My children, of course, act embarrassed, but I like to make up songs and situations that are silly. Just fun memories. Keep things lighthearted at home, so it is important. Don't let your day be the focus of your time with your family. Let the fun be a big part of being together. Be an example to your children. I think we all know what we do is as important as what we say, for example, to our children. It is important to show your children what is important to us as adults. I teach the 2-year-olds at Waterview, and I have for 31 years. And I wish I knew, I've done it for at least 31. I think it's a little more, but I know I did it before I had Parker. I think it's important to show commitment to an activity, and that's been one big one that I've shown commitment to. Other things we've done is we've been in charge of our LOA group. We do things to model to our children how important our Christianity is to us. Also, you want to be active in what your children are active in. You're not only being an example to them, but showing them how important they are to you. My husband Les and I have both tried to do this with our children. Just some examples: Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, sports teams, church mission trips, track, LTC. All these things we tried to have an active role in so that our kids would know how important they were to us. Don't bring your job home. I have a rule I use when I come home from work. It actually started before I had kids. Of course, in the day, there were situations, I'm a teacher, that were happening to me that were stressful. I had a girl that she was on Deep Ellum one night, snuck out of her house, and I don't know that, I still remember the story so well. It was my first year teaching, and those kind of things would just eat at me, and I'd have to just deal with it. And so I finally got to the point that I didn't want to bring that home all the time. And I came up with the idea that at some point on my drive home, I wasn't going to think about my day anymore. I was going to let it go. That was it. And so I had some railroad tracks, and when I crossed those railroad tracks, my day was, what's going to happen next? What am I having for supper? What are we going to do tonight for an evening activity? What TV show might I watch? Whatever. And that was what I did. And it has helped me so much. So the interesting thing I found about it was, you know, I've done it for years, and I've kind of made it my mantra, but I had a friend who had a young little toddler daughter, and he was telling me how, gosh, it's so hard to forget about your day and move on. And I said, yeah, but it's so important that you're there for Reese totally, not just for your job, because she's so important. And I told him my story, and I told him what I did, and he started doing it. And a week later, he goes, I am so glad you told me that. It's made all the difference in my evenings. So I think that's a good way to think about it. Readjusting your schedule, being ready, the list goes on. Let your children know they are your priority. That's my biggest message. Taking my college son's phone call from school in the middle of class. Being ready to talk to Lindsay even when I just sat down to do something else. Turning around when I'm halfway to work because I realize Samantha's lunch is on the counter in the kitchen, and taking it to her at school. These are all little readjustments in my day I do to show my children how important they are. I hope all these things I do or say reflect to my children how precious they are to me. The reason I have confidence in the mother of my children is I know that I do for my children know that in all that I do, my children are my priority. I try to meet their needs to the best of my ability. I think one of the worst things you can do is look back and have regrets. It's important to live every day to the best of your ability and move forward, always knowing you tried your hardest to love, nurture, and raise your children. Thank you.
Hide me away, oh Lord. Hide me away, oh